For more of this kind of content, you can subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave a comment. The ice storm howled like a starving beast, its frozen breath tearing at Lucas's skin through the thick layers of his suit. He moved forward in a staggering run, each step crunching against the glassy ice beneath him. The world around him was nothing but white blinding, endless, merciless. His ship was gone, swallowed by the storm, and if he didn't find shelter now, he would be next. Then, through the haze of frost and desperation, his visor picked up something heat, faint, barely there, but real. A chance. He didn't think. He sprinted. The cave entrance loomed ahead, jagged like the mouth of some ancient predator. He lunged inside, nearly collapsing as he crossed the threshold. Darkness swallowed him whole, and for a few blessed seconds, all he could do was suck in air, his breath clouding in front of him. The wind still screamed outside, but in here, the ice couldn't reach him. He had made it. But the moment his vision adjusted, he realized something was wrong. He wasn't alone. A figure moved in the shadows, a woman, not human. She stood at the other end of the cavern, her tall, hourglass form framed by the eerie blue glow of bioluminescent crystals embedded in the walls. Her skin was smooth and violet, her full lips parted slightly as she breathed heavily. Her black eyes, like pools of liquid darkness, locked onto his with an intensity that sent a rush of adrenaline through his veins. A survivor, a predator. Lucas's muscles coiled as he instinctively reached for the plasma pistol at his side. But then he noticed something. She was shivering. Hard. Her arms were wrapped tightly around herself, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Her body trembled with a cold that even her fierce glare couldn't mask. Still, her voice, when it came, was razor sharp. "Human," she hissed, her tone dripping with defiance. "This is my shelter. Turn around and walk back into that storm before I decide to throw you into it myself." Lucas let out a breath, half a laugh, half a curse. "Lady, I don't know if you've noticed, but that storm out there doesn't give a damn about either of us." He took a cautious step forward, scanning her carefully. "You look half frozen. You need the heat as much as I do." She bared her teeth in something between a sneer and a challenge. "I need nothing from you." Another violent tremor racked her body, and this time she couldn't hide it. Lucas narrowed his eyes. "Liar." He stepped closer, slow, deliberate. "Yeah?" His voice dropped, low and rough. "Then why do you look like you're about 2 minutes from turning into an ice sculpture?" Her gaze burned into his, filled with the kind of pride that didn't bend easily. But her body betrayed her again, a sharp shudder that stole the air from her lungs. Lucas crossed his arms. "This cave is freezing," he said, his voice edged with something dangerous. "And I refuse to die here." He met her glare head on, and neither do you. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The storm outside shrieked like a dying thing, the temperature inside plummeting. The cave offered no warmth. There was only one way to survive. And judging by the way her pupils dilated as she looked at him, she knew it too. The silence between them was razor thin, tension crackling like ice, ready to shatter. The storm outside was getting worse, the temperature inside the cave dropping so fast that Lucas could feel his fingers going numb even through his gloves. The alien woman Luna, as he would soon come to know her, was visibly struggling, despite the stubborn defiance carved into her striking features. Lucas wasn't an idiot. He knew the signs of hypothermia when he saw them. Her skin, despite its exotic purple hue, was paling, her breath uneven, body trembling beyond her control. "You're freezing," he said, voice firm. "We need to share body heat." Luna let out a sharp breath, half disbelief, half warning. "I would rather die than let some human press his sweaty flesh against me." Lucas smirked despite the situation. "Funny, I was just thinking the same thing about you." She bared her teeth at him, an almost feral expression, but her body betrayed her once again, another hard shudder, a slight unsteady sway on her feet. Lucas clenched his jaw. Damn it. If she didn't get warm soon, her organs would start shutting down. Whatever species she belonged to, she had a humanoid form, which meant her survival instincts had to be at least somewhat similar to his. And yet, even on the brink of freezing, she still had the audacity to glare at him like she wanted to rip his throat out. Prideful, stubborn, and utterly infuriating. Lucas sighed, stepping toward her with deliberate slowness. "Look, I get it. You don't trust me. Hell, I don't trust you either. But we're not making it through the night unless we stop acting like enemies." He gestured to the cave walls. "There's no food, no fire, and no backup coming for either of us. Our best chance of surviving is each other. Luna stared at him, her dark eyes sharp with defiance. Humans are weak. Lucas huffed out a dry laugh. And yet, I'm still standing here, offering to save your freezing ass. She sucked in a breath through her teeth, her shivering growing worse by the second. He could see the war raging inside her instinct versus pride. Then, finally, with a low growl, she muttered something under her breath in a language he didn't recognize. Before he could ask, she moved. Fast. Before he knew it, she was on him, pressing her body against his, with a force that made him stumble back a step. Her skin was ice cold, her trembling undeniable, as she buried her face against his chest, arms gripping the fabric of his suit with an almost reluctant desperation. Lucas tensed. Hell, he hadn't exactly been prepared for her to just throw herself at him. She was softer than he expected. Her curves fit against him almost perfectly, her breath warm despite her cold skin. The scent of her was intoxicating, something subtly sweet, something alien. Luna let out a sharp exhale, frustration thick in her voice. This is humiliating. Lucas smirked, wrapping his arms around her, pressing her even closer. Yeah, well, welcome to survival, sweetheart. She stiffened at the pet name, but he ignored it, focusing instead on keeping them both alive. He could already feel the warmth starting to return to her body as their heat combined. Her shivering began to ease, though she was still tense as hell, like touching him was an act of war. Relax, Lucas murmured against her ear. The more tense you are, the longer it'll take. Luna huffed, shifting against him, and that was a mistake, because now she was pressing even closer, and Lucas was suddenly very aware of every inch of her, and judging by the way she inhaled sharply, she was aware of him too. The storm outside raged on, but inside the cave, another kind of tension was beginning to build. Lucas had been in dangerous situations before gunfights, high-speed chases, even a close call with a collapsing asteroid field. But nothing had quite prepared him for this, being pressed against a fiery alien woman who, moments ago, looked like she wanted to gut him, and now had her body molded against his for warmth. Her breathing was steadier now, the violent shivering easing as his body heat seeped into her, but she was still too tense, her muscles locked tight, as if she hated the very idea of relying on him. You're still shivering, Lucas muttered, his breath warming the side of her face. You need to relax. Luna let out a sharp exhale. Relax? I'm pressed against a filthy human, clinging to him like some fragile creature. Lucas smirked. Funny, because you feel far from fragile, right now. She stiffened at his words, and Lucas couldn't help but enjoy the moment, how the ever-proud warrior alien was now at his mercy in a way she clearly hated. But there was no denying the way her body had started seeking out his warmth on instinct, the way her breathing hitched just slightly when he shifted his grip around her. Her skin had warmed up, the initial chill replaced by something else, entirely something electric. Lucas could feel it in the way her fingers unconsciously gripped the fabric of his suit, in the way her chest rose and fell against his. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. Then, Luna broke the silence, her voice a low growl. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Lucas let out a breathy chuckle. What gave it away? She tilted her head slightly, her dark, predatory eyes locking onto his. Even in the dim cave light, her gaze burned. Your heartbeat. It's faster than before. Lucas raised an eyebrow. You can hear that? I can hear everything about you, human. Her voice was a challenge, a taunt, as if daring him to react. Lucas smirked, unbothered. Well, considering the fact that you're still wrapped around me, I'd say this goes both ways. Luna made a frustrated noise, but she didn't pull away. Instead, her fingers tightened against his suit, her body unconsciously pressing closer. Lucas felt it, the shift in the air, the unspoken tension between them morphing into something else. Neither of them wanted this, but neither of them could ignore it. For a long moment, the only sounds were their breaths, soft, steady, warming the space between them. Then, in a voice just barely above a whisper, Luna spoke. This doesn't mean anything. Lucas chuckled, his lips grazing the shell of her ear as he murmured, Sure, whatever you say, princess. She stiffened again, either from the name or from the way his voice dipped, low and teasing. Outside, the storm raged on. Inside, a different kind of storm was brewing. The temperature in the cave hadn't changed, but the air between them had grown thicker, heavier, with something neither of them was willing to acknowledge. Lucas could feel the rise and fall of Luna's chest, the way her body had begun to mold against his, despite the sharpness of her words. Her warmth had returned, no longer the trembling, desperate heat of survival, but something deeper, something undeniable. Luna was still too proud to admit it. "This is strictly for survival," she muttered, as if saying it aloud would make it true. Lucas smirked, shifting slightly. "Uh-huh." Her fingers tightened against the fabric of his suit at the movement, and Lucas caught the flicker of something in her dark eyes. Annoyance, frustration, but also something else, something unspoken. Her body was betraying her, and they both knew it. She let out a slow breath, her voice laced with irritation. "You're enjoying this far too much." Lucas chuckled. "I'm enjoying the fact that you're clearly struggling more than I am." Luna growled, her pride flaring. "Struggling? You think I—" She stopped abruptly when he moved just slightly, adjusting his grip around her. The movement was innocent enough, but the effect was instantaneous. She inhaled sharply, her fingers twitching against his chest. Lucas smirked. "Something wrong, princess?" Her eyes snapped up to his, dark and dangerous. "Stop calling me that." "Why?" He tilted his head, his voice dropping to something lower, something edged with amusement. "Because it makes you feel something you don't want to admit?" Luna's breath hitched. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other, the distance between them non-existent, the storm outside howling like a distant echo of the tension crackling between them. Temptation. It was right there, hanging between them like a taut wire ready to snap. Lucas could see it in the way her lips parted slightly, the way her fingers had stopped resisting, and instead gripped him tighter. He could feel it in the heat radiating off her skin, in the way she hadn't pushed him away even though she could have. Luna was a warrior, proud and untamed. She didn't bend. She didn't surrender. But right now, she was on the edge of something dangerous. Lucas could feel his own self-control hanging by a thread. Then she spoke, her voice lower, almost as if she hated what she was about to say. "I hate you." Lucas let out a husky chuckle. "No, you don't." Luna didn't respond, because they both knew he was right, and that was the real problem. Luna's breath was unsteady, not from the cold, not anymore. It was something else, something neither of them wanted to name. Lucas felt it too. The heat between them had nothing to do with survival anymore. They were too close, too aware. The storm outside battered against the cave walls, the wind howling like a wild beast trying to claw its way inside. But the real storm, the one that was tearing through the space between them, was right here. Luna's fingers twitched against his chest. She could push him away, but she didn't. "You're still shaking," Lucas murmured, voice low. "Because you won't shut up," she shot back, but her tone lacked its usual bite. Lucas smirked, his grip tightening slightly around her waist, drawing her in just a little more. "Is that really what's bothering you?" Her black eyes flickered up to his, burning with something fierce, something undecided. Lucas could practically feel the war raging inside her, pride versus instinct, dominance versus desire. And then she did something that caught him off guard. She moved, not away closer. Luna tilted her head just slightly, her breath hot against his skin. Lucas's smirk faded. For the first time, she wasn't resisting. She wasn't fighting. She was testing him. "You think you've figured me out, don't you, human?" she whispered. Lucas exhaled, his fingers grazing the curve of her back. "I think you're still trying to figure yourself out." Luna's lips parted, her grip tightening against his suit as if anchoring herself. This was dangerous. They were playing with something volatile, something that neither of them had control over anymore. And then she snapped. With a low, frustrated growl, she shoved him backward, slamming him against the icy cave wall. The force should have hurt, but Lucas barely felt it. His adrenaline was too high, his focus locked solely on her. Luna stood over him, her chest heaving, her expression a mix of anger and something else. "You're insufferable," she muttered. Lucas leaned back against the wall, completely unfazed. "And yet, you still haven't let go of me." Luna's fingers curled tighter into the fabric of his suit. She wanted to deny it. She wanted to walk away, but she couldn't, because whatever had started between them was no longer in their hands, and they both knew it. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The only sound was the storm outside, howling its fury, as if the planet itself sensed what was unraveling inside the cave. Luna was still pressed against Lucas, her fingers gripping his suit, her chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. She could feel his heat, his pulse steady beneath her touch. Every inch of her was still on fire, but not from the cold anymore. Lucas watched her, his dark eyes sharp, knowing, daring her. "You're still holding on to me, princess," he murmured, his voice a deep, husky challenge. "What exactly are you waiting for?" Luna hated him in that moment. hated how he saw right through her, how he wasn't afraid of her dominance, how he stood there like he belonged in her space, like he belonged with her. She was not weak. She was not supposed to feel this way. But Lucas was different. He wasn't like the others, those who feared her, who bowed to her power or sought to control it. He didn't cower. He challenged her, matched her, met her intensity with his own. And that was why she was losing this fight. Her breathing was uneven, her grip against him too tight, like she was afraid to let go. Lucas tilted his head, his lips just barely brushing the side of her face as he whispered, "Let go, Luna." Her entire body tensed. Her control was slipping, the last fragile thread fraying between them. Then she did. With a sharp, frustrated exhale, she closed the distance, pressing herself fully against him, her grip fierce, her body burning where it met his. Lucas caught her without hesitation, his arms locking around her, as if he'd been waiting for this moment, as if he'd known all along that she would break before he did. Their breaths mingled, hot against the icy air. Luna hated this. She hated him. But she needed him more. Outside, the storm raged on. Inside, the fire had finally consumed them both. The moment Luna gave in, something shifted between them. She wasn't trembling from the cold anymore. No, the heat between them was something far different now. It burned from the inside out, an unspoken wildfire spreading through every inch of her body as she pressed herself against Lucas. His grip was firm, holding her close, like he was steadying her, or maybe challenging her not to pull away. But she didn't want to pull away. She could feel the shape of him, the solid warmth of his body against hers. He was human, different from her in so many ways, yet right now, he felt like something she needed. Lucas let out a slow, heated breath, his hands sliding along her back, his fingers grazing the contours of her waist. He wasn't rushing, wasn't demanding. He was simply there, waiting, watching her, with those dark eyes that saw too much. "You're not shivering anymore," he murmured, his lips dangerously close to her ear. Luna's breath hitched. "Shut up!" Lucas chuckled, low and rough, the sound vibrating through her skin. He tilted his head slightly, his lips brushing against the side of her temple, not quite a kiss, but enough to send a shiver through her spine. Luna clenched her jaw, her fingers tightening against his suit. This was wrong. She was a warrior, a leader, a woman who had never let herself need anyone before. But right now, in this moment, her body was betraying her. She could feel the heat in her chest, in the pit of her stomach, in the way her breath came quicker when Lucas shifted against her. "You don't like this, do you?" Lucas mused, his voice edged with amusement, not being in control for once. Luna's fingers curled tighter against him. She hated how well he could read her, how he knew exactly what buttons to push. "I am always in control," she shot back. Lucas smirked, his grip firming just slightly around her waist. "Then prove it." It was a challenge, a game she wasn't willing to lose. Luna moved before she could second-guess herself, tilting her head and trailing her lips along the edge of his jaw. It was slow, deliberate, a silent answer to his dare. Lucas stilled for a fraction of a second. Then he exhaled sharply, his hands tightening on her waist in response. She had him. She had both of them. The air between them was thick, charged with something dangerous, something neither of them could stop. Luna felt the tension coiling in her muscles, felt the way Lucas's fingers flexed against her as if he were holding himself back. But why should he? Why should either of them? The storm outside had finally begun to calm. But inside, the real storm had only just begun. The silence between them was heavier than before. Luna still felt the lingering warmth of Lucas's touch, the ghost of his breath against her skin. The tension between them hadn't faded. It had only shifted, morphed into something neither of them had the time to unpack. Because outside, the storm had stopped, and in its place, danger had arrived. A sharp, mechanical beep echoed through the cave, followed by a sudden blinding light flooding the entrance. Luna tensed, her warrior instincts taking over as she pushed away from Lucas, her body already shifting into a defensive stance. Lucas didn't hesitate either. His hand went straight to his plasma pistol, his dark eyes focused on the shadows, moving beyond the cave's entrance. Then, a voice rang out. "Luna Veyron of the Zhekril Dominion." Luna's blood went cold. She knew that voice. Lucas glanced at her, his jaw tightening. "Friends of yours?" Luna's hands curled into fists, not even close. A moment later, the cave was bathed in the unmistakable blue glow of energy rifles. 3 figures stepped forward, their violet-skinned bodies clad in dark combat armor, their faces concealed by sleek, high-tech visors. The insignia on their shoulders made Luna's stomach twist. The Zhekril Dominion. Her own people. Here for her. Damn it. Lucas must have sensed the shift in her because his voice lowered. What's the Dominion doing all the way out here? Luna gritted her teeth. They're here to drag me back. Lucas's brows furrowed, but before he could respond, the lead soldier took another step forward, leveling his weapon. Luna, he repeated, his voice edged with authority. By order of the Dominion High Command, you are to surrender immediately. Luna narrowed her eyes. She knew what surrender meant. It meant chains. It meant confinement. It meant being forced back into a life she had fought so damn hard to escape. Over her dead body. Lucas muttered under his breath, flicking the safety off his pistol. Yeah, I don't like the sound of that. Luna's lips curled. Then don't. And with that, she struck first. She moved fast, a blur of purple and fire, as she lunged forward, disarming the nearest soldier before he could react. The moment his weapon hit the cave floor, Lucas fired one clean shot, sending another enemy sprawling. The remaining soldier snarled, raising his rifle, but Luna was already on him, twisting his arm in a brutal motion that made him cry out before she sent him crashing into the cave wall. In less than 10 seconds, it was over. The cave was silent again, the only sounds their ragged breaths and the faint hum of the soldiers' fallen weapons. Lucas exhaled, holstering his pistol. Well, that was fun. Luna shot him a look, but the adrenaline pumping through her veins was making it impossible to focus. This wasn't over. More would come. They had found her. Lucas must have seen the flicker of unease in her eyes because he stepped closer, his voice steady. We need to move. Now. Luna clenched her jaw. She knew he was right. Whatever had happened between them in the cave no longer mattered. Because now, they weren't just trying to survive the cold. They were running for their lives. Luna's heart pounded like a war drum, her muscles coiled and ready. The Dominion soldiers lay motionless on the cave floor, but they weren't the real problem. The real problem was who had sent them. How had they found her? Her people were relentless, but even 4 was an uncharted wasteland. No one should have been able to track her here unless... She turned sharply to Lucas. We need to move. Now. He was already holstering his plasma pistol, his dark eyes sharp with understanding. How many more should I expect? Luna exhaled, scanning the cave entrance. Enough that we won't make it out alive if we stay here. Lucas nodded. Then we don't stay. A sudden high-pitched beeping echoed from one of the fallen soldier's wrists. Luna's stomach dropped. A distress beacon. Damn it. Lucas cursed, already moving. How long before they show up? Luna's mind raced. Minutes. If they've already locked onto this location, they'll send an aerial unit. Lucas gave her a sharp look. Aerial. As in, we're about to have a damn battleship hovering over us? Luna didn't answer. She didn't need to. The look in her eyes said it all. Lucas clenched his jaw. Then we better get the hell out of here. They moved fast, darting toward the cave entrance. The moment they stepped out into the open, the ice wind hit them like a blade, cutting through their bodies, but neither of them hesitated. They ran. The frozen terrain was treacherous, but Luna was built for this. Her body moved with precision, her footing steady despite the uneven ice. Lucas kept pace beside her, his endurance impressive for a human. Then a deep, mechanical roar split through the air. Luna's blood turned to ice. Lucas looked up. His face darkened. Tell me that's not... It was. A Dominion Hunter-class dropship was descending fast, its sleek black hull gleaming against the storm clouds. Its searchlights flared to life, sweeping across the terrain. Luna grabbed Lucas's arm, yanking him toward a rocky outcrop. Get down! They barely hit cover before the ship's cannons powered up, a low hum vibrating through the frozen air. Luna's mind raced. If they didn't move now, they were dead. Lucas met her gaze. Ideas? Luna's pulse was wild. She had one, but he wasn't going to like it. We steal their ship. Lucas blinked. Then he grinned. Now you're speaking my language. The Hunter-class dropship was descending fast. The soldiers inside, no doubt preparing to storm the cave, but they weren't expecting an attack. Luna flexed her fingers, feeling the heat of adrenaline surge through her. They had one shot at this, and she wasn't going back. Not now, not ever. The Dominion dropship hovered overhead, its engines rumbling like a predator preparing to strike. They had seconds, maybe less, before the soldiers inside deployed. Luna crouched low behind the jagged, ice-covered rocks, her breath controlled despite the adrenaline pounding in her chest. Lucas was beside her, one hand gripping his plasma pistol, the other flexing restlessly. He was waiting for her move. How many on board? Lucas asked, his voice low, steady. Luna's sharp eyes flicked to the ship. A standard Hunter-class unit carries 6 to 8 soldiers, but they won't expect an ambush. Their priority was retrieving me. Lucas gave her a quick side glance. So, you're saying they're not worried about me? Luna's lips curled slightly. Number. But they should be. Lucas huffed a quiet laugh, but his grip on his weapon tightened. Tell me the plan, Princess. Luna ignored the nickname. We get close before they drop the ramp. Once it lowers, I take the lead. Dominion soldiers fight in formation, but they won't expect a direct assault. If we break their structure fast, we take the ship before they can call for backup. Lucas nodded. And if they do call for backup? Luna's fingers twitched. Then we don't leave survivors. Lucas raised an eyebrow. Brutal. She turned to him, her dark eyes flashing. I told you, human. I'm not going back. Lucas met her stare for a long moment. Then he smirked. Good, because neither am I. The ship's side thrusters roared, stabilizing as it prepared to land. This was it. Luna moved first, swift and silent as she sprinted toward the underbelly of the ship, sticking to the shadows beneath the massive hull. Lucas followed effortlessly, keeping pace despite the rough terrain. Above them, the ramp began to lower. The moment it was open, they struck. Luna lunged first, her body a blur as she leaped onto the platform, landing between the nearest Dominion soldiers before they could react. 1 strike, 2 down. Lucas was right behind her, his pistol firing with deadly accuracy, catching a 3rd soldier before he could reach his comms. The element of surprise was theirs, but it wouldn't last long. A sharp hiss of metal rang out as a Dominion enforcer stepped forward, taller, bulkier, wielding an energy blade that crackled with violet plasma. Luna's instincts flared. She dodged left, the blade slicing the air where her head had been moments ago. Lucas didn't hesitate. He fired a shot straight at the enforcer's helmet visor, but the Dominion armor held strong. Damn it! The enforcer lunged again, this time at Lucas. Luna moved without thinking. She blocked the strike, her strength meeting the enforcer's in a violent clash that sent sparks flying. Then, in a swift motion, she twisted, using his own momentum against him, flipping him onto his back before delivering a brutal strike to his throat. The enforcer collapsed, motionless. Lucas whistled. Remind me never to get on your bad side. Luna didn't respond because another warning alarm blared inside the ship. Backup was coming. Lucas cursed. We need to lift off. Now. Luna spun toward the cockpit. Can you fly it? Lucas grinned, already running toward the controls. Princess, I can fly anything. Luna followed, sliding into the co-pilot's seat as Lucas's fingers danced over the controls, bypassing the Dominion security codes with surprising ease. The ship rumbled beneath them, engines powering up. Luna glanced at the exterior cameras. Another Dominion ship was incoming. Lucas, I see it. His voice was tight, focused. Hold on. With a sudden, violent lurch, the ship lifted off, cutting through the ice-laden sky, just as the second Dominion vessel opened fire. Luna's grip tightened on the seat. They weren't free yet, but they were damn close. The stolen Dominion dropship shook violently as it cut through the storm-ridden skies of Even 4. Plasma fire erupted behind them, the second Dominion vessel in relentless pursuit. The ship's warning alarms blared, flashing red across the control panel. Luna's fingers gripped the co-pilot's console, her sharp eyes flicking across the readouts. Shields holding at 40%. Not good. Lucas, I hope you actually know what you're doing. Lucas, hands firm on the controls, flashed a cocky grin despite the turbulence. Wouldn't be fun if I did, would it? Luna growled, turning her attention back to their situation. The Dominion ship was faster, more heavily armed. If they didn't act now, they'd be blown out of the sky before they even reached orbit. She scanned the sensor readings. An ice canyon. Deep. Treacherous. Dangerous. Perfect. There. She pointed at the approaching canyon system. Fly into the ravine. Lucas glanced at her, his smirk fading. You want me to fly a stolen ship through a death trap at top speed? Unless you have a better idea? Lucas exhaled sharply. Damn it. Then he yanked the controls, sending the ship plunging downward into the canyon. The Dominion vessel followed instantly, but this was Luna's territory now. She knew how her people flew. She knew they relied on precision, on calculated maneuvers, but Lucas wasn't a Dominion soldier. He was unpredictable, reckless, dangerous, and that was their only advantage. The walls of the canyon streaked past them, jagged ice formations looming like frozen daggers. Lucas weaved between them with impressive skill, pushing the ship to its absolute limit. Luna's pulse quickened, not just from the danger, but from him. How was he so calm even now? How did he make her feel so alive when they were inches from death? Another plasma shot whizzed past them, searing too close to their engines. Luna cursed. They're gaining on us. Lucas's jaw clenched. Not for long. With a sudden, sharp maneuver, he dove toward the canyon floor, skimming so close to the icy surface that frost formed against the ship's hull. The Dominion ship followed exactly as Luna knew they would, and that was their mistake. Lucas grinned. You might want to hold on, Princess. Then, at the last possible second, he pulled up, twisting the ship into a near-vertical climb, right as an ice bridge came into view. The Dominion pilot had no time to react. The ship slammed into the frozen structure, exploding into a bright fireball of blue and white energy. The shockwaves sent their stolen dropship spinning, but Lucas gritted his teeth, steadying the controls just in time. Silence. The only sound was their ragged breathing as the flames faded behind them. They had won. For now. Luna exhaled, tension still thrumming through her body. Lucas leaned back in the pilot's seat, shooting her a side glance. Told you I could fly anything. Luna didn't smile. She didn't laugh, because something far worse was creeping up on her now, the realization that she had crossed a line. She had let Lucas in, and it terrified her. The ship hummed quietly as it drifted through the cold abyss of space. Even 4 was nothing but a frozen memory below them, and for the first time in days, Luna and Lucas weren't fighting to survive, but that didn't mean they were safe. Luna sat in the co-pilot's chair, her gaze locked on the endless stretch of stars outside the viewport. Her body was still tense, muscles coiled like she was waiting for the next battle, the next chase. But the real fight was happening inside her. She had spent her entire life running from the Dominion, from expectation, from anyone who dared to get too close. And now she was in a stolen ship, with a human, no less, whose presence made her feel something she didn't understand. And worse, she didn't hate it. Lucas leaned back in the pilot's chair, hands behind his head, smirking as he watched her from the corner of his eye. You look like someone who just lost a war. Luna's jaw clenched. Maybe I did. Lucas raised an eyebrow. Not a fan of winning? She turned to face him fully now, her dark eyes serious, filled with something even she couldn't name. I was never supposed to need anyone. Lucas's smirk faltered, just slightly. He let out a breath, watching her carefully. And yet, here we are. Luna hated that he could read her so easily. She hated that he made her question everything. But most of all, she hated that he was right. Lucas leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, his voice dropping into something softer. What are you afraid of, Luna? She should have had an answer. She had spent her life fighting, surviving, refusing to be vulnerable. She had never let anyone in. But Lucas had changed something, and she didn't know how to fight it. She exhaled sharply. This doesn't make sense. Lucas chuckled. You think anything about this situation makes sense? Luna looked at him, really looked at him, this stubborn, infuriating human who had matched her stride for stride, who had never once cowered, never once tried to control her. Instead, he had stood beside her, like an equal, and that terrified her more than anything else. Lucas tilted his head, his smirk returning. You know, if you want me to stop, all you have to do is say so. Luna clenched her fists. She should have said it. She should have ended this before it became something more. But the words never came. Instead, she closed the distance, her body moving before her mind could stop her. Her fingers curled into his shirt, her lips hovering just over his. Lucas didn't move. He just waited, watching her with that same knowing look, that same unshakable patience, because he already knew the truth. Luna wasn't running anymore. She had surrendered, and for the first time in her life, she wasn't afraid. The end.